Hi everyone. So finally, the first day of SLAT has already happened, and we have a memory-based paper with us. I'm going to discuss that paper in detail with you. But before that, let's see exactly how many questions were asked. What was the difficulty level of this section, specifically English? So if you look at the slide in my background, English section precisely had 12 questions, and I would rate this section as easy to moderate. So, not very difficult. English was easy. Most of the questions were factual. We had approximately 3 reading comprehensions that were asked here in this section. I'm going to discuss 2 of these reading comprehensions in detail with you today. Apart from that, we had no grammar, we had no vocabulary. We had vocabulary only based on the passage. So, no additional vocabulary like synonyms and antonyms, no parajumbles, and no grammatical questions. Precisely 3 RCs were asked in this section. Now, let's see how do we answer these questions and what are the correct answers according to us in these reading comprehensions. So, this is the first reading comprehension. This reading comprehension talked about the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act and how there was a revival in this act. This was taken out of the Hindu's editorial. And the good part, we have already discussed this in one of our previous the Hindu analysis classes. So for all those people who had been regular with those analysis classes in morning with me every day, you would know this article by heart. This was not a very difficult article though to read, and the length was also precisely really small. So this article talked about the medical termination of pregnancy and how the revival in the act was a welcome thing, but there were some glitches that were attached to it. There were some problems that might have arisen out of it. This article talks about that. If I move on to the questions of this passage, this is the first question that asks you a vocabulary. What is the meaning of the word antediluvian? Now, antediluvian literally means anything that is old or retro, anything that is old fashioned. So, out of the options that we have, well known, classic, hilarious, and ridiculous, any word that links to old or retro will be my answer. Obviously, our answer has to be B here. Anything that is classic is antediluvian. This law, the MTP, medical termination of pregnancy, was called antediluvian here. Okay, but now it has changed a little. Now, coming on to the next question. How can the law be detrimental? This question may be confusing for some of you. I believe some of you had marked A, some of you also had marked B as well. Okay, so here, how do I decide my answer? When this law was in place where women weren't allowed to terminate their pregnancy until certain period of time, a lot of unsafe abortion practices were conducted. So this whole revival in this law is a welcome one, because now the cases of unsafe abortion will fall down, because a woman has a permission to abort her pregnancy even after a certain period of time under the guidance of a legal lawyer and a legal doctor. So here A will be an incorrect option. This cannot be our answer, because rather than this proving as detrimental, this will actually be reducing after the revival of the law. A cannot be our answer. Automatically our answer here becomes D. It may encourage sex selective abortions. If you look at the last line of the passage, it will tell you why this law will have a drawback. How can this law be detrimental? This has a drawback because people may get into sex selective abortions. So that can be a harmful side effect of this law. Now, if I look at the next question, what is the tone of the writer? This may also be confusing to some people. Some people may mark very critical, some people may mark worried, some people may mark optimistic also. How do I decide the tone of the author here? So, the passage starts off with telling you about what the old law was and how the new law is welcome and how this will improve things at a lot of levels. This is how the passage goes. And the last line tells you there is a detrimental effect that can be seen of this law. So this might be a little confusing for you. Let me clarify the answer here. Is it very, very critical of this new amendment in the law? Is this article very, very critical? Very critical? Possibly not. There is one line where a criticism can be given where people can get into sex selective abortions, but that's merely one line. On the basis of that line, can I call it very, very critical? Possibly not. So there are instances where there are criticism, but the whole article cannot be very, very critical. Then the author is of course worried again in the last line, but he is worried only and only in the last line. So how does he look at the whole law completely? He looks at the law in a very optimistic manner, where he says a woman who is not even married is also allowed an abortion if she is willing to. It's a welcome thing. So the author here looks at the whole law in a very optimistic manner. Our answer here has to be C. Look at the next question. The fourth one. What is the implication of this law to living relation? The living relation here means a relationship between a man and a woman where they aren't married. And the passage clearly had stated that this amendment in the law has given upon the word husband. Now, since the law has given upon the word husband, anyone who you are staying with or possibly you are pregnant with is also equally responsible and equally you can terminate the pregnancy even if you aren't married. That is the implication of the law to living relation. Now, according to that explanation, the answer has to be B because the law has recognized the living relationship where a pregnancy is out of not a marriage but a living relation. So the answer here is a living relationship is recognized by the law here. This was the first passage. The second passage, let's look at that in detail. Now, the second passage is another one that was picked out of the Hindu. So now I do not have to focus enough on the fact that how important is it for you to read the editorial every day. Okay, so this was also picked out of the Hindu. We had also discussed this in detail. This article talks about, it links politics to multiple difficult scenarios our world may be facing, including the COVID crisis right now. What are the impacts of it and how can politics deal with this scenario right now? This article talks about that. Now, look at the questions here. The first question, it was a little longer than the previous passage we did. So the first question, according to the author, why do we need a great deal of introspection followed by conscious action? This passage may be considered as a moderate difficulty level to some people because of the words it chooses. But if you understand this, if you do not pay a lot of heed to the difficult words, it is a very simple one. It talks about the present scenario. It is on the current affairs. So if you're aware about it, you will not have a problem with this. Again, back to the question, according to the author, why do we need great deal of introspection followed by conscious action? According to us, the answer has to be D, because when a crisis comes, it completely plagues nations and countries and people get angry over that because they do not have a solution. The answer according to us here is D. Next question. So there was a line that was picked up from the passage and you had to tell the meaning of the word populist. Even if you do not read the whole line, you can easily tell the meaning of this word because it's a very commonly used word in the editorials. A populist is used for a politician who specifically tries to woo or tries to project the rights of common people. So here the answer has to be ordinary people. The word populist signifies a person or a politician who represents the interests of common people, ordinary people. Our answer according to us here is absolutely A. The next question, what is the main factor responsible sorry, for worsening the crisis situation? Now this was a tricky question. I'm sure some of you must have been confused here. A crisis situation, for example, COVID. What is the main factor responsible for making this situation worse? It could be A, because people are dislocating and upheavals and that is affecting every sphere of human activity. This can be an option. I'll keep this pending. Financial crises have seriously dented economies of nation. Yes, that has also happened during the crisis. Then novel coronavirus pandemic shows few signs of ebbing. Few signs of ebbing means there is no subsiding in the case here. Then this can also be a pending answer because it's also close. And the last one, health crisis, which has not spared any nation because it's a worldwide problem. So all the options were very close, but I had to identify the main factor. The main factor here, according to the passage, is C. All of these things are happening. But what makes it worse is that these things will not even subside because of the fact that COVID 19 is not subsiding. So these things are responsible, but these are going to be worse because COVID 19 is they're showing no signs of ebbing. Our answer, according to us, here is certainly C. The next question. In the article, the author is concerned about the crisis which may give rise to political oligarchy. Again, what is the meaning of oligarchy? If you've been coming daily to the morning editorial classes, you will know I have discussed this word multiple times in my classes. Multiple times. Oligarchy. Then I had taught you to break the word as well. Archy is governance. Oligarchy is governance by what? Choose the answer here. The answer has to be D. Control of the nation, government by a small group of people is oligarchy. The answer here is D. So that was some of the questions that were memory based questions. Apart from these two passages, there was one more passage that was asked, but we'll keep that for later on. And all of you who are appearing for SLAT on 11th and 12th of July, all the best. I'm sure you are going to excel in it, and may God bless all of you. Give your best, everyone.